I mean, you don't have to go, crazy and be like, all right, 20,000 a month. Like, you don't have to go like right to that, but take it up 30% or 40%. Watch it really close for, 30 days and just see if the metrics are changing with the sales team, like and decreasing, or if the metrics are, are they're still on trend with what the results have been previously. All right, everybody. So, welcome to another episode. Super excited to have a guest on again, Kyle Pearson. And it's really funny because, we actually met years ago in my earlier 20s, from afar. I've been watching his business grow for years and, seeing him, professionalize more and more. And somebody also, great to follow on Instagram for the things that he's doing and the content that he's putting out. So, just want to say, thank you, Kyle, for being here. Excited to talk more about your business with you as well. So, if you'd like, tell us about, what do you do? What does your team look like? What is kind of the revenue for the company? How long have you been doing it? And we'll dive into some things that you're working on and maybe some things that you're trying to accomplish, overcome here in 2024.
Absolutely, Cody. Hey, thanks for having me on. My name is Kyle Pearson. I'm the owner of Pearson Moving and Storage here. We're located in Mesa, Arizona. I am now in my 11th year of business. Started this company when I like to say a young and dumb 19-year-old. Obviously starting a business is very difficult, and starting it at 19 is a great time to start a business because you don't really know of all the what ifs. You kind of just dive right in and take it how it comes. But yeah, I mean, I remember, gosh, it had to have been like 9 years ago. You took me to Chipotle. I remember we were both young,
Yes,
and
Chipotle at Dana Park in
that
Mesa.
was it. And we were just chatting, and we had a bunch of mutual friends and whatnot, and we were talking. And I remember at the time you were talking to me what you were doing every day and with the call lists and stuff. And I was like, dude, you're a hustler, man. Like it's awesome. So it's been a good friendship here over time, watching you grow and your success. But yeah, so we offer residential, commercial moving and storage services. We offer interstate moving, packing, pretty much everything having to do in the moving world. My company, I like to talk about it because 10 years goes fast. Okay. And so we've completed 10 years now. And when I started this business, I had no moving background. I didn't even know there were moving companies that existed. I was challenged by my best friend at the time. I'm not kidding. I was in college. I came from a normal family in Gilbert. Family said you go to college, you get a business degree, you go work for the man, and that's what you do. Growing up in Gilbert, I had a lot of friends, that lived in the custom home neighborhoods and things like that. And I remember paying attention. I remember paying attention, and I'm like, what do their dads do? And that was it. They own businesses. And so I knew that that's what I wanted to do. It's easier said than done because I was like, what am I going to do? At the time I was going to college, I was at ASU, and my best friend legitimately double dog dared me. He's like, why don't you go buy a trailer and start moving people? And I thought about it for 5 seconds. I had $3,000 in my savings account at the time. I was working a part-time job at a Lexus dealership, and I went and bought a cargo trailer on Craigslist and started advertising moving services on Craigslist and ran with it. And one thing about myself, which I like to attribute, is anything I do, I'm going to go all in. Failure was not an option. As cliche as that sounds, like it was just, this is what I do. This is my personality. I'm going to be a mover, and we're going to hustle, and we're going to do a good job. And luckily it blossomed into something great. Lots of potential still out there for growing this company, which I'm excited about. But I am a true entrepreneur, but I'm also a father and husband. And so looking back at my last 10 years, I've gotten married. I've had 2 kids. We have a third on the way right now. And I like to describe myself as just a typical American dad, because as I was growing my business, there were multiple plateaus, and those plateaus came along with having the first kid, having the second kid, getting married, things like that. So there were the growth years, and then there were the sustain years, I suppose would probably be a good way to look at it. And that's where we're doing this show together, because you excel in helping people get to the next level. automation, delegating and everything that you consistently talk about on this show, I have a good structure. We have an awesome structure. I've got two gentlemen in my office that are fantastic. We have our full-time sales manager who, handles everything sales related. And then we have our full-time operations manager, which his position is to train the crews, hire, make sure all of our customers experience a five-star service and be able to problem solve on the fly with anything that can occur, because moving day is never a walk in the park. And so underneath them, we have usually about 10 movers on staff. And so our team consists of about 12 people all in. And our revenue since about 21, so the last 3 years, we've been right at that $1 million a year mark. And I've been in growth mode, I mean, since then. So for the last 24 months, I keep telling myself, we're going to get to the next one. We're going to get to the next one. We're going for 2 mil. We're going for 2 mil. I don't like making excuses. And so I don't have an excuse on why we haven't been able to blow past that. We've been implementing new things. We've been trying new things. Is what I could pat myself on the back is this past year. Over across the industry, moving has seen roughly a 30% decrease in revenue for, average based off the housing market, interest rates. Your typical consumer is not moving as much. And that's been really hard on the industry. I'd like to pat ourselves on the back and say last year we saw 7% growth from the year before. And I'm looking at that and I'm saying, I'm seeing my competition go out of business. I'm seeing my competition report record losses. And we were able to grow still, which I'm telling myself, hey, you did a good job, but I don't like making excuses. I want to get to that $2 million mark. I want and grow past that. And so that's where we're at. We have a great business. We have a beautiful office here in Mesa, and we have a great team. Like I love our culture. I love our guys. I want to keep reforming culture. I'm jealous of some of these businesses that have like incredible, like you guys post about like your work parties and your culture, and you guys talk about it on your podcast and on Instagram and stuff. And so I am jealous of that. And I'm working to aspire to that. But I love my business, man. It's got my name on the side of the trucks, and it's something I'm proud of. It's not something I was proud of for a long time because I was really timid. I actually had a full beard for like my first 7 years of business. I wanted to portray that I was older and more mature than I actually was, a 21-year-old, 22-year-old kid owning a moving company. And now that I just reached 30 this last year, I'm like, I catch myself wanting to look younger now. And so, I am, I am proud of the business and I'm excited for what's to come. So I'm excited to hear from you and gather that wisdom.
I love it, dude. I turned 30 this year and I'm like, oh my gosh. I feel like I'm having a midlife crisis, but 10 years before I guess you're supposed to. I was just, through December, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm turning 30 in 5, 6 months. And yeah, I could definitely relate with that. I couldn't grow a beard. I didn't have much facial hair until I was like 25. So, I just looked like I was 12. I would just try to talk as confidently as I could to, have people trust me. So I definitely resonate with that. You've been able to have your business running for 11 years, which most businesses fail the first couple years. The amount of businesses that are sub a million a year are actually like there's millions of businesses in the United States. And the amount of businesses that reach a million a year is in the like hundreds of thousands. And it's like, so it's like a significant gap, that solopreneur state, which is like how you started, where you're the one doing everything. Like you're talking to the customer, you're telling them, the pricing, you're then going after you got the deal and actually probably facilitating, the moving yourself. And then after the moving's done, like quality checking, making sure everything's done. And then, hustling, getting on the phone in between all of that to try to get another move probably scheduled. And it's just, it becomes for a lot of people, which is really impressive about what you've been able to do, is what most businesses stay stuck in is in that solopreneur phase where it's themselves. Maybe they have one or two people helping them at some point, but a lot of people get stuck in that. And it's, there's a lot of limiting beliefs that I think a lot of business owners have where they're like, the people won't care as much as I will. They're not going to do as good of a job as I will. They're not going to treat my customer the same as I will. It's like all of these things that, really just become limiting beliefs. And then also the risk tolerance to do what you've done of like hiring team members and building, having a dozen people working within the company. It's like, those are all massive hurdles that most business owners aren't able to, overcome. And so it's super cool that, you've been able to do that, working through of like, okay, like what's the gap from that million to going to 2, 3+ million a year. And I guess even like, is it even the goal to want to do that? Or I guess what's your goal with the company? It's like, is it like, all right, freaking 10 million a year, moving storage and all the things? Or is it like, I want to get it to a certain amount of revenue, maybe hire in another manager that, kind of takes a lot of, your time away from the business and spending more time with the family, and kids? Or like, what does that look like for you?
Absolutely. I'm glad you asked because that has been an answer in the making for the last 10 years. First off, I'm really passionate about business in a whole and business, my business. I'm extremely passionate about them. And the thing is I like to consider myself as a really high level worker when I'm working. I come into my office usually about 3 days a week, usually going to be in by 7 a.m. and I go hard up until about 12 noon. And I like to say I get a lot done and it's head down 5 hours straight and go. After that point, I'm usually tapped out. Like I feel good. I'm like, man, I like to say I got an entire workday done in that 5 hours. I can make excuses and, there's obviously my other people are working harder than me. I get that, but I go home and then I'm with my family, and that's what keeps me going. That's my priority. Not saying that I don't. I mean, I have a home office. If you ask my wife, I work all the time. On my phone and things like that. But the fact that I'm seeing my kids in the room across from me, playing whatever they're doing, just growing up, that's what makes this entire program work for me. And I know everyone's different, but that's what makes it works for me. I like providing opportunities. Like the two guys I have in the office, they know their jobs for the day. They're bringing in the sales, or we're executing. I mean, that's really the formula in business is the sales and the execution of it. And so I like being able to provide those opportunities. If I were to paint a vision of what my life looks like, it would be to have a reason to travel with my family for business purposes. I like the moving industry. Definitely a viable option to have different locations across the country. I want an excuse to have a family moving airplane and be able to travel and have a mix between my moving business, maybe some other home service businesses. As you're very familiar, a lot of the systems and processes will translate. And then just recently got started investing in real estate about the last 15 months. We've done 2 house deals out of state now, and that's been super fun too. I don't have a construction background or anything like that, but I am learning very quickly. I've always been good, at least in like the vehicle and toy market, on finding deals. I love deals. I'm extremely passionate about deals, buying and selling and things like that. And I've had good success with toys and vehicles, as you know. Total different game in real estate. If you can find that deal in the real estate, there's a lot bigger lottery ticket available. And so I think a mix between that too, growing this business and possibly others, continuing investing in real estate, and then gosh, man, if the Lord permits, have a family moving airplane that allows us to travel and see other parts of the country, I think would be the ultimate vision for myself.
I love that. That's awesome. So one thing that's interesting that I noticed, I don't know when you started doing this, or if you always had been. So I could just be wrong on this, but I remember it was just like Pearson moving, and then I remember at some point just seeing storage added on there.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so, what do you see as like the plan with that? Is that like to create, recurring like monthly storage residual revenue from like, storing people's stuff? And I guess, are you planning on like adding on additional, verticals to what you're doing? Like, I don't know, like junk removal services, or like, I don't know, like what does that kind of look like?
I'm going to quickly touch on the junk removal just because that's a shorter topic where I can blow through that. When COVID happened, I had a general manager I had hired at the time. He came from a junk removal background. And so he's like, hey, let's add junk removal. So we bought a dump truck. We started advertising. We did it for about 6 months and I was not a fan. And the reason I wasn't a fan was because we were struggling with competing with the Facebook neighborhood groups where an unemployed person would clear out an entire garage of junk for someone for $50. because he had a pickup truck and he wasn't doing anything and he wanted the cash. As a company with overhead and insurance and employees, it was really difficult to compete. And again, I don't want to make excuses because you've got a lot of successful junk removal companies that are doing it right. Just the way our moving company was structured, it was difficult for me to blend the two. I couldn't figure it out. And so we stopped that after about 6 months. That was our experience with junk removal. Now, the storage began 2.5 years ago. So I bought the building that we're in. So we were renting a small warehouse space in Chandler for like the first 6 7 years of our business. And after seeing how those who are successful get more successful, I said, hey, we're gonna go buy a commercial building and we're going to have it pay for itself through the vehicle of the business. And so we did. It was in the middle of COVID, when everything was uncertain. We explored a new build opportunity for building a warehouse on like an acre of dirt. Trucking company. We need storage. We need space for the trucks, things like that. And I had a slap of reality when I was meeting with some design firms, and it was going to be well into the seven-figure range, which was not something I was prepared to do at the time. And so, building was not going to be an option at that period. But what we did find was we found, they're called the flex space, condo space, warehouse facilities. We found a shell unit, that there was a family. So we're in North Mesa. We're right across the street from Falcon Field Airport and Boeing, and it's a really nice part of town. So I'm really happy with it. We found a family business that was in the carpet space. It's like a multi-generational family business, and they owned like four of these units. Just so happened one of these units was simply just their excess storage space. They had no infrastructure in it. They had their office and stuff in the other units, but this one unit was simply a shell. They hadn't developed it. I had a friend of mine who actually owned a unit in this complex, and he helped me get in contact with this family. It was during COVID again, so this family was they had the unit paid off and everything, and they were downsizing, as a lot of businesses did in COVID. I was able to work an off-market for sale by owner deal with them, and we had the local title facility, facilitate it all. We did the SBA loan. I know people have mixed feelings with the SBA. I can't say I'm going to raise my hand to work with the government at any chance. But young entrepreneur buying real estate through your LLC with a loan and everything like that, the SBA was a great outlet for me. And so we did it. Everything came together. We did a full construction loan. And so I got to design my space. I'm really proud of it. We did like the glass walls and kind of a modern industrial spin on it, super practical. But in the warehouse, we do storage. And so our monthly storage that we bring in from customers takes care of most of our mortgage on this building, which, allows this to be, a great asset hold for me.
What percentage of that space that you have is like, filled with, customers that have the moving? Like, is it like pretty much filled up and you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm going to need to expand this? Or is it like, yeah, we're kind of in and out and it's kind of sporadic? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so our storage hold with customers from what we have available in the warehouse, we're always going to be between about 80 to 110% of our capacity. And when I say 110%, I mean like we have all the units filled up, and then we've got items palletized on the floor, which is usually going to be very short term. Like that customer is only in for like a week until their new house closes, and then they get back out. We're sitting back about a 90% threshold. So I would love the opportunity to expand that. I lean a little more conservative when it comes to investing with my business than maybe others. And so the idea of like running out and either purchasing another building or anything like that, I'd like to do that very calculated. And so I haven't considered that yet. But for the business model we have right now, it works, man. It works.
Yeah, I mean, because the thing is, like, okay, so let's kind of talk through some of some of that. So, out of the revenue, what percentage of it is it attributed to that storage? The storage throughout the year.
It's very small. It's going to be, gosh, it's 5% of revenue a year. It's not a large money maker for our business. I know of some very successful moving companies here in the Valley that I network with. And I mean, with their storage, I think they generate $100,000 a month in revenue, and we do 3 to 4 thousand a month in our storage revenue. And so it can be a very successful game. What that gentleman has done is he has catered his storage business to the commercial vendors that are constantly requiring that. So your high end stagers and things like that. That's one of my struggles. Is gosh, man, I just don't know how to go out and form those relationships with the right client. And so I think that's a holdback for me.
Like you said, though, it's like, what's your risk tolerance? Because a lot of businesses risk tolerance and like, what are you comfortable, opening yourself up for? But, I look at that and it's like, obviously, like growing the moving, revenue seems like a great thing to obviously continue to keep doing. But if you're able to buy another building and, have, I don't know what the mortgage is going to be, $4,000 to $8,000 a month, but it's enough space to generate another 10, 12, 15 plus thousand a month. I mean, obviously, what the math is now based on the square footage. Like, what's the revenue per square footage of the storage that you're able to get? And then seeing, okay, what would the math have to look like on buying maybe another building to then be able to fill that up? And like what would have to change to be able to add on that additional business to start filling up that space? You're already at capacity, so like that's already, I'm sure that's a problem at times. I mean, I would guess you probably turn away customers sometimes, right? Because there's too much stuff. Or does that not
Sometimes,
typically
yeah.
happen?
That specifically is not as much of a problem for us right now, just because storage clients don't come to us as often, so it usually times up at an okay time. But I mean, yeah, there has been plenty of times in the last 2 years where we're like, we are full on storage. If you want to go find a place down the road, we can move you into it. That's been the conversation a couple times.
And obviously, like, it's just doing the math, right? It's like, okay, if there was another space, like, what would it take to get it to a break even based on what you guys charge now? Because there's that hidden wealth builder behind the moving or behind the storage, which is the building that you're buying. That's then the principal pay downs happening over years. And even if it's, at the initial stages, not extremely profitable, like maybe it's break even or a little bit above that, and then you work on adding on to it, like you're also getting that building, you're getting tax benefits too, to go against your personal income as well. Obviously that's something that your personal risk tolerance has to make sense for, but it seems like that would be a really good opportunity to be able to expand and grow your wealth longer term too with the real estate. I do want to transition a little bit on, like, what do you think with your team is preventing you from being able to go from that million to 2 million? Like, what do you think the gap is? Like, if you had to say like top one or two things.
The biggest thing would be to acquire more leads. We have the data that tells us our closing rates. We have the data that tells us the number of leads we're getting per month and what sources are providing the most. And we've learned a lot of those lessons this past year, and we've turned off marketing streams that haven't been performing. And I guess the scary thing for me would be to go double my ad spend. Google is a huge driving force for home service businesses, and the thought of me just doubling that doubling that budget this month,
And
it's a little nerve wracking for me, but I know that that's a holdback.
yeah,
And so, yeah, leads.
yeah,
We
that
have the
makes sense.
infrastructure.
So, do you know what the average revenue per move is, like, across the board? So, like, in a year, it's like, this is how much our average move is going to bring into the company.
Yep, average move is going to be about $1,300. That from a 12-month perspective, it's going to be a $1,300 service. My salesman closes one in every two leads. He closes about 50% right now, which is great. I've had salesmen that have closed one in three before, but he closes one in two, and I think that's great. So we have that data, and it's a formula.
So, how much does it cost you to generate one closed move right now?
So it's about $100 in that marketing cost tied to that customer.
So, if you spend $100, you know that you're going to close a $1,300 sale.
Yes.
Dude, like, that's like, pour the gas on.
Yeah, I was gonna say, gosh, thinking about this, the way you're saying, I'm like, holy crap, man, I need to stop making excuses.
a lot of it's math. Like obviously team members have to perform and all of that, but like it all could be worked back to the formula. Because it's like if you look at, if your average move is $1,300, and then we look at, okay, so it's $1,300 on average. So what does it take to get one $1,300 sale? It's going to take, however many leads. And if we can get the cost per sale, to actually get a closed sale is $100, bro. Like I would be spending as much as I can.
Okay. Yeah.
Like
No,
at those numbers, it's just what I guess it's just been the kind of the is it like a limiting belief maybe around just like spending more, and it's just like a scarier ad spend, or like what do you think it is?
yeah, I'll be completely honest. Since COVID, as every industry and every business and every society, city, society, we've seen expenses skyrocket, right? So margins have been shrinking with the cost of insurance and labor, and exactly. And so I think as I'm watching that, I'm holding my cards closer, because I'm like, hey, we're gonna weather a storm. Everyone talks about this economic downturn and real estate, and people aren't going to be moving, and election year, and all this fun stuff. And so the thought of me losing my business is really the grim reaper behind the door. It's an uncomfortable feeling. And so I think the thought process of just going for that has been nerve wracking for me. But I mean, it's obvious that you got to spend more to make more. And so just having this conversation with you is like, it's just real. Like, I'm just like, shoot, man, like, you're right. I just need to go onto Google, double that budget.
And the thing is, you could turn it down if it's not working, right? It's like give it a time to be able to work. But if you look at, okay, so if it's you spend $100, you're gonna get a sale that's $1,300. Then it's just okay. Then the math in between, right? Like you have, because that's not all profit. So it's like you have your cost of goods all in there, that that's a part of that. You have your sales, the sales team commissions. So do you know what the cost is to the company to acquire that sale totally? Like one good measure is knowing what is the cost from advertising to get a sale, but then it's
Hmm.
what does it cost the company to fulfill an average sale. So like of that $1,300, do you know what that looks like to actually fulfill that from like percentage, like from a percentage basis?
Hmm. Yeah. So typically with payroll, fuel, sales commissions, that's usually going to be about 50% of the total. Payroll is, we try to keep that under 40%. And you've got fuel and driving these big trucks, things like that. But I'd say all in, we try to be about 50%. And that's been a newer metric that I've been studying, and I'm embarrassed to say that, but I try to better myself. And so after 10, 11, after 10, 11 years, I've learned that there is actually a formula tied to the profitability of a job before you talk about all company overhead and things like that. And so based off my understanding of that formula that I've actually really been looking at the last 60 days, it's about 50%.
Okay, so and the reason I said don't feel embarrassed is like, dude, I have some friends that have businesses that are doing 5 million, 7 million, 8 million a year. There's a business that me and Pace bought this year. They were tracking nothing. Like they just would sell stuff like pure sheer force, grit, push, sell, push harder, work harder, and track nothing, and it just hopefully it works out. So it works for a time, but like the reason that we have anxiety and business, in my opinion, on spending money, especially around advertising, is not knowing with certainty what our numbers are. Because if we know with certainty what the numbers are, it's just a math equation of if I put in $1, I should be able to turn out of that 1.25 or $1.5 out of that. And if we know that's true because we're keeping track of things correctly, then we can move with confidence in our decisions. Because it's really the uncertainty of not knowing if all of those things are actually making a difference or not, or if you're just like throwing money at something and it's just burning and it's not really doing anything. So if you can sit down and say, okay, in my business, I'm going to spend $100 to get a sale. It's going to cost me 50, and is that $100 the ad spend included in that 50%, or is that not included in that?
No, that would equivalent that would be the ad spend, and so based on our closing rates of either 1 and 2 or maybe 1 and 3 on an off month, that's pretty much the breakdown is $100 per service job.
Okay, so if the cost is 50% of that 1,300 divided by two, so it's 650 plus, let's call, and then adding on the other $100, so it's about $750 all in, like cost of goods, fulfillment, gas, team, salesperson, all of that. So if you have $750, and you have 1,300, that's, I mean, dude, like you're at like 50%, even with the marketing. Then the question becomes, what are you comfortable having the company, make on a profitability standpoint? There's margin in there. As long as these numbers are all true and like super dialed in, it sounds like you could just ramp up what you're spending and be able to, and I guess, do the sales team members have the capacity to take on more leads?
We do. Yeah, I firmly believe so. We service our current revenue. That was another mistake I made as a business owner. Is there was a time at I owned 6 work trucks, and I thought it was the coolest, measurement in the moving industry. We have 6 trucks, and is what I learned was those 6 trucks would go out on the same day 2 days a month. Typically, the last day or two of the month when all the leases are ending, and that's when a lot of people move, or maybe Saturdays. Saturdays are a busy day. Those and I would only send out 1 truck per job. We wouldn't double stack jobs on like apartments. Apartment jobs are 3-4 hour jobs. We would send 1 truck out to go service that job, and that was it. Right now, I own 4 company vehicles, and our focus is maximizing the efficiency of those vehicles. We don't like sending out 1 vehicle for 1 job, unless, of course, it's like a house move. And so we've been able to cut our fleet nearly in half and still maintain the same revenue stream. We also don't let like company assets be a limiting factor. We can pick up the phone and call Enterprise Truck Rental that we have a commercial fleet account with, and like order trucks with no notice. And so it's like I firmly believe, with the help of my office and my team in the field, my operations manager, his ongoing duty is hiring. So we're doing interviews every few days. So we have guys in the pipeline. So if we see a huge uptick in, scheduling, right? Because we're scheduling 1 to 2 weeks out, we have time to bring that individual in. We've already interviewed them. We've already got a green light from the insurance company that they're qualified to drive, and background check and everything looks good. And now he just needs to spend 1 to 2 days with the operations manager in the warehouse and do some training before we attach them to a seasoned team to go out in the field. I mean, that's fine. That's what's cool about the moving industry is I couldn't imagine doing that with, say, like a plumbing or electricity company, because there's a lot more to
Skilled
learn.
labor.
Absolutely. And so that's the good
Not to
part
say
about my
moving is
business.
unskilled, more so just
Correct.
like
I got you.
licensing and all of that.
Absolutely. I totally, nope. Yeah. No disrespect. Totally tracking what you're saying. Like, but that's a benefit to being a moving company owner. Like, that's so cool. I don't have, boom trucks, like cherry picker trucks. Like, we can go get a freaking U-Haul if we need to. If we're backs against the wall and we keep selling jobs, dude, we can service that. And so, like, that's a benefit to owning a moving company. We have the infrastructure, I firmly believe, to be able to handle that $2 million right now. I act as a wingman to both sales and operations. That's where my duty comes in. And so I believe I would be taking on a full-time position for myself, a little heavier, if we were at that $2 million mark. That would probably be my next threshold to hire someone else to help out. But I believe we can get it done with what we have.
Dude, that's super exciting. And like you said, it's like you can hire as you grow. And that, again, and I know it's like harping on it, but it's like if you know what the cost is to do all of the things, and what that means for the business, like, do you know what the sales cycle is too? So like if you get a lead today, do you know how soon that typically is going to convert into an actual revenue to the company?
Absolutely. So typically, on average, we have people call for same day moves, and we have people that call for moves 4 months out. But I will say, on average, our clients are calling in to book a move 2 to 3 weeks out. So we will realize their revenue within 21 days.
That's amazing. So then you can know with certainty that if you up your spend, that within 30 days, you're going to be realizing additional revenue coming from that. And if not, you can know that you can turn down the ad spend again back to where it's a more comfortable level to, because maybe what happens is your close rate goes down because now instead of your sales team following up as much as they know they should be, they have more leads, so they're missing some of their follow-ups, or maybe there's other things, like other things start to happen when sales teams get to capacity. One of our companies, we were like, this is earlier on, and just not knowing, is we would try to have our salespeople on, like, we want them on a call every hour for the whole freaking 8 hours. And what we realized is that was a very stupid move that we made, because we were just like, that's just going to mean more sales. What we found, and every business is different based on the sales cycle, how long the calls are, how complex, all of that matters. So like, this isn't what I'm saying like you should do, or like someone listening should definitely do, but it's like understanding what your sales cycle, sales conversation looks like. Like with that particular business, we found that it really made more sense for our sales team to have only 5 or 6 calls in a day. Like, as far as like, because they would get calls booked on their calendar, they're typically 45-minute calls, and they'll have 15 minutes to do admin, like CRM stuff for the lead, make sure the notes are updated, make sure whatever needs to happen after happens. Invoices sent out and things like that. And then we found way more effectiveness and more conversion when we had them on a little bit less scheduled calls, and then they had more time to follow up. So they had 2-3 hours to follow up with calls they had the day before, calls they had the week before, the month before, 2 months before, so they can keep, because the fortune's always in the follow up with the sales teams. And so that was a mistake, transparently, that we made. We're just like, yeah, we just have them on calls all day, we'll get more sales. And it was actually less, and we got more sales when they were on a little bit less calls, because they're able to actually follow up. So that's something to, just to be looking at and set, I don't know, look at it for 2 months. Like, what do you spend on ads right now?
So our marketing we're about all in. Our marketing budget is going to be 80,000 for the year.
I mean, you don't have to go, crazy and be like, all right, 20,000 a month. Like, you don't have to go like
Sure.
right to that, but take it up 30% or
Okay.
40%. Watch it really close for,
Mm-hmm.
30 days, and
Okay.
just see if the metrics are changing with the sales team, like, and decreasing, or if the metrics are, they're still on trend with what the results have been previously. Wrench it up a little bit more. Another month goes by. Obviously, you understand how many, movers are needed based on the amount of sales that are happening, and, to fulfill on that. And that's just another math equation. I mean, we have that at our virtual assistant company. We have to have a certain amount of people that are, our recruiters are recruiting in the Philippines, and a certain amount of people going through classes, through training, to then be able to fulfill for X amount of customers. And it all starts with that beginning part of the equation, which is, how much does it cost to get, for us, that customer. So for you, it's like, how much does it cost to get the move? Okay, is it profitable? Yes, it is. Okay, let's add on more to that. And if we're adding on more to that, what does that mean for the sales team? How many more calls do they need to make? And then how many calls is capacity for the sales team, where then you need to hire another salesperson? And then with that amount of sales, then with the fulfillment, which is the movers, then it means how many movers do you need, and that operation support that you're talking about, needing as well. So it's just all starting there and then following that through. And like for us, we'll have like projections that we'll look at on a Google sheet, where it's like that starting point all the way down. So it's like, you can throw in, okay, if we had X amount more leads, it means this many more calls for sales, and all the way down. And if you have that, then you're just looking at the numbers daily, weekly, monthly, and then diagnosing if there's a decline in sales. Did the leads decrease in value, or is it there's some issues with the sales team, where they're too overwhelmed, or what is it, right? So, man, I'm excited about like where you're at in your business, dude.
I'm glad. Dude, just talking with you, I'm like, I'm about to go tell my sales team it's Christmas morning again, and Kyle's up in the marketing budget, so get ready for some more sales.
Dude, it's like, why not? It's like, and again, it's like, you can control it, and it's like, take a budget you're comfortable with. I wouldn't
Yeah.
say if you're spending 8,000, go to 9,000. Like, that might not do enough to like really
Right.
make much of a difference. Like,
Right.
I'll go from 8 to 11,
Okay.
12,
Yeah.
whatever your risk tolerance is comfortable with.
Yep.
give it a couple months to see how that goes, because certain lead channels also have a diminishing return too. You can't just spend a
Yeah.
gazillion
Yes.
dollars on Google ads and it'll be the same return. So there's
Right.
also that diminishing return that happens as well, but it's exciting stuff.
I think I've got my my project.
Dude, yeah, I mean that's what I would look at doing. And if you're able to do that, what would you say is, because that seems, and really, again, impressive and super cool, just that you're actually tracking the numbers. Because if you're doing that, you're going to make good educated decisions. And when you can make decisions from data, you're not making decisions on your gut. You're making an educated decision as a business owner of, this is what the data shows. And the data, I like, at our companies, it's like data over drama. I don't want to hear the story of what happened. I want to hear, or I want to look at the data that'll tell me the story of what happened. And I know, we're coming up on time, but I'd love to talk, just on at least one more thing on some of the team side. What do you think's your biggest challenge with your team right now? Like, I know you're talking about like improving things with the team. Like, what do you think's the biggest
Hmm.
thing holding you back from getting to where you want to see the team at right now?
That's a perfect question. It's obviously a new year. It's an opportunity for a company to do a fresh start without disrupting too much water with your team. I would imagine coming into your team and offering a meeting in the middle of July that's saying we're changing all of this stuff could be a lot more difficult. So we just did a company meeting 2 days ago, and we're going to be changing just a few things, nothing drastic. But one of the things is our uniform for our guys in the field has always been the cheapest screen printing T-shirts that money could buy. That was the way we did it. They sweat through them, whatever. And I'm like, no, we want to be marketed and we want to be portrayed as a premium brand. So we are transitioning to dry fit style polos for the entire team. What the service we're providing, we are inside someone's house. We are moving their child's crib, right? It's a very intimate time. And I'm like, we need to be that Chick-fil-A of the moving industry. The yes, sir, yes, ma'am. We're a customer service business that just happens to offer moving services. That's the way I tell every applicant that I've ever interviewed. That's what I want them to understand. And so if you're a mover, I mean, dude, props to you, because that is not an easy job by any means. I mean, it is physical labor for
No,
8 to 10 hours a day, and you're dealing with the stress of a client. The client, I mean, moving is like one of the top three stressful times in someone's life. So
it's
it
the
is a
worst. It's the worst
it
thing ever. I hate moving.
it is, right? And so that's difficult in our industry. And so my struggle right now with our team is how do we get them on board to accept these new company practices? We've tried over the years. We've said, hey, tan or black shorts only. And then they show up in Adidas gym shorts. And as a business owner in the moving industry, when finding labor is a very difficult task, how do you offer a mover's wage to someone to do manual labor that still has to pass a background check? Like, we can't just hire a thug. Like, they're inside someone's house moving their things. So we need to have that high level candidate at, it's not the highest paying industry. And these things, we try to marry that together. It's just like, what are we going to do? Are we going to fire them because they showed up in Adidas shorts? And I'm starting to tell myself that unfortunately we're going to have to. If we're going to make these changes, we have to hold the line and be firm on that. But that is a struggle, is how do you get these guys on board with that?
Yeah, so there's the carrot and the stick, right? It's like, carrot, incentive, stick, like punishment. And so I what we try to do, and we're not perfect, we have tons of problems. We just fired someone yesterday. Like, we hire, like, it's just, every business has these problems, and we all just try to do the best that we can and be the best well-intentioned owners of businesses that we can. Thing that you could look at is, what is the incentive that is offered to, like, the team members that are the movers, that communicate the best with your clients, and that dress well, and that you're proud for them to represent the brand. What do they get for incentives?
I don't have a response to that. We've tried a handful of different bonus programs, 5-star reviews, showing up on time every day, you get a bonus. And it's like, we had a bonus program last year on paper. It was published to our team, and I think it was very simple. It was be at work before 7 a.m., which is your start time, be on time, and get like 5 5-star reviews from a client per month, and you would get a few $100s or something per month. And it was like, no one would achieve that because they would come into the office like 7:10 one day. And it's just like, it's discouraging as the business owner to try to implement those bonuses. And I know it comes back to me. Everything is the business owner's fault. So can I come up with a new program that does work? Absolutely. I just don't have that right now. So I don't have an answer for you on that.
And that's totally fine. It's like, and it's always testing, right? Like you implement, like we've implemented bonus things and then like it doesn't work, they don't hit it. And it's like, oh, maybe it was too unrealistic of a thing. And I think around that, it's like the bonus or, the incentive is, something around like, what is the main problem trying to be solved? Obviously if someone shows up at, supposed to be there at 7, they show up at 7:40. It's like, that's a major problem. But,
Yeah.
maybe it's like, what is the biggest value add to the company that the team could be doing when they're working with clients or out in the field that, you would want to reward? Because I don't know if they show up at
Yeah.
7:10, like, are they still able to be successful,
Yes.
or, I don't know.
Yes, they are. Exactly. The grand scheme of things, arriving at 7:10 does nothing to the job. Our customers, we give them a 60-minute time window. That way we can cover anywhere in the Phoenix Valley within that window. So 10 minutes late, they're still going to get to the job site on time. The customer won't know a difference. And so the best thing that we could incentivize a team to do is to just do such a kick butt job for that customer. I call it flirting with the customer in a professional manner, right? You're inside someone's home. I'm not telling you to go and talk their ear off because you do have a job to do, but there is a fine line between just keeping your mouth shut and doing the job and not even showing the customer an ounce of human. Whereas if you can show the customer, provide that service, and joke with them a couple times and make them smile, and you earn their trust, you earn their referral. That is the most rewarding thing. I just talked to you about the cost to acquire a customer, but I'm pretty sure if that customer then refers us to their neighbor, there is a little bit of a cost associated with that we could get into, but ultimately there's not a dollar figure tied to that referral cost. And so that would be the best thing I could reward someone for.
And sometimes like, testing different things where it's sometimes like money isn't always the thing. Like we did, we've done things with like raffle rewards, like we, like Diamondbacks tickets, Suns tickets, different things where like sometimes, especially, certain, types of workers, they don't like $100 they're like happy for, but they're like, whoa, like I've never even been to a Suns game. Like this is freaking cool, So maybe it's like thinking about what are other experiences that they could experience. Like we did a thing in December and we had the bonuses where it was like new AirPods. One was Suns tickets, one was Phoenix Open tickets with drinks and food included, even though it's like or we could have gave them $150 or $250. But thinking of like what are things, and maybe even asking them what would be something that you guys would be excited about, and or asking the manager that runs the teams that's out in the field, like what are the things they talk about that they're excited about, and that would be meaningful to them. But it sounds like the reviews and then also getting the referrals of the moves would be the biggest support or help for the business. So figuring how to incentivize around that. And but I do agree on the if people aren't adhering to like how you do things, like it's just you have to keep that hiring funnel. The same way it goes for getting the new client is having that funnel for the new hires. It's like if you know that
Yes.
100 applications come in, out of those 100 there's 27 of them will actually make it to an interview. Out of 27 there's actually going to be 10 that get offered a job. Out of those 10 offered, 4 take it. It's like if you just know your numbers on the hiring funnel side too, that also gives more certainty to let people go. Because that's,
Yes.
with our sales teams or, VA business, it's like we just know it's going to be X amount of people that have to go through this funnel to actually end up working within the role. So you can confidently let someone go because you have someone in the pipeline to replace them with. It's like thinking about like Chick-fil-A, like, do they let someone show up in like a different attire? This is what we do here. Like this is how
Yeah.
we do things here. And this
Yep.
is this is just part of the job. Like, this is the bare minimum. This is what we do.
That's it. We actually did learn that lesson as far as the hiring numbers go. In 2022, I contracted with a firm that specifically did all the interviews and application reviews and everything, and made sure that we had weekly interviews. So, and they were specific to the moving industry. So I learned a lot through them. And the best takeaway I had with contracting with them for a year was it is a numbers game. It is the exact same game as sales. It is you must advertise for ads, which we did for hiring, and it was we knew that to schedule 20 interviews, one would work for us 2 weeks after hiring. It was a terrible formula, but that was the numbers. And then last year is when I hired the full-time operations manager, who was awesome. He's actually a previous employee of mine and knows the business very well. And with the ongoing hiring and that funnel, we both agree that we are no longer handcuffed by any employee that's not willing to adhere to the company policy. And so I don't like bragging that we're quicker to fire or anything, because I don't want to fire. I believe people fire themselves, and that's an important lesson to learn. They're making a choice. And so yeah, I mean, we just let someone go on December 30th because in the last 2 weeks, he's just shown up in a random t-shirt. And we're like, dude, you've worked here for 8 months. How many uniforms do you have? Like, show up with a uniform on. And it was just, hey, man, you're a good worker. We've liked you. I like you as a person. But it's a very simple ask, is to show up in a company uniform to work. And that was it.
Yeah. And it shows the standard to the other team as well of like what's
Yes.
acceptable and what's not. It's like what's tolerated is going to persist, and other people see that, and it's unfortunate, but like that, you getting on top of those numbers on that is super helpful. Another metric that we track and I think has been helpful in higher churn roles more specifically. So like, one of ours is like video editors. Like we have a lot of video editors, and um, is we track the average amount of time the team members in like certain roles stay with us. I don't know if you track that. So it's like we look at, on average, this role is going to last for 13 months or 16 months.
Okay. I love that. I mean, we do loosely. I don't have an exact metric for you, but I know, an average mover is going to work for the company about 90 days. We have guys that are 6 to 12 months. We have guys that are 6 to 12 hours. So three months is kind of what we expect.
Yeah. And so, and it's not like that's, again, like it's not something that's the end of the world to know that perfectly, but like that could be something the operations manager or whoever's really involved in the recruiting and hiring, just
Hmm.
knowing that, it just gives more planning. And the reason
Yeah.
why I say that becomes more important is when you go to 2 million, 3 million, 4 million a year in revenue, and then it becomes more people intensive, and you're doing a forecast for the business of like, okay, if we want to go to this amount of revenue, it's going to mean this many jobs. How many team members is that going to be? So then you could accurately forecast, we're going to have this amount of hiring happening because we know they're going to churn within 3 months or 4 months. So even though it looks like we're going to have enough number in July, because we've went to a higher revenue number, it's really, we're going to be losing more, a higher percentage churn of our team members based on that. So it just it's more helpful in the forecasting when you have that piece sorted out. So not something that has to be done immediately, but like as you're growing and adding in revenue, it gets a little bit more complex with the amount of bodies running around doing things.
No, it's absolutely 100% true.
So in I know, as we come up to the end here, Kyle, most of the people that listen to this podcast, they're like, I'm more of an introvert, and that's where I kind of put the podcast around, that is like speaking to my fellow introverts. And I'm not a big visionary with like this big personality on social media. Like I try to get content out there regularly because I want to help people and work with other business owners. But what would you say are your biggest lessons or tips that you would share with those listening to break through that solopreneur stage into getting to where you're at?
It's easier to tell someone that being on the other side now, of course, right? Because that person that's receiving this advice is like, there's no way. They're not seeing it through that veil. And I would just speak to them specifically and just say you need to understand that by delegating tasks at your company, there is a twofold benefit that comes to that. One, you're buying your time back because if you are a solopreneur, you you don't have any extra time. That is your life. And so by hiring and delegating, you are buying back some of your time, and also you're allowing that individual to go out and produce more revenue for you. It's a win-win to oversee them and allow them and give them what they need to go out and succeed and help your business succeed. And so it's one of those jumps that you do need to take, but it will work out tenfold for you.
That is, on this podcast, I talk about like building a business beyond yourself. And that's truly that step of, getting out of your comfort zone and, being okay to delegate and understanding when you delegate, people are going to screw stuff up. People are going to make mistakes. We all do. I make
Right.
mistakes. You make
Right.
mistakes. We all make
Yeah.
mistakes and things that happen. And one of the things I tell people is, when you start delegating, delegate some of the simple tasks first, and don't delegate maybe like managing the entire company's financials if someone's never done
Yeah.
that before. Like that's probably not a
Yeah.
good idea. But like, starting with small things, and you stack, you build trust, and you'll have to fire people. It's gonna happen, and that's okay, because they're gonna be able to move on to something that's better, that they're better fit for, and you're going to bring someone else on that's a better fit to do the thing. And so that's, I love that. And, truly the difference, I think, between that solopreneur to where you've been able to get to, Kyle. And, I appreciate you coming on and, being open and transparent to talk through some of the things that you're working on, some of the challenges. And I'm excited to hear the changes that you're going to be making. I mean, sometimes when I'm talking to people and like what not even on the podcast, and it's like, oh man, like this person's business is a freaking train wreck, they got a lot of things. I'm like, you have a really cool business that it seems like there's some small tweaks that you can make that are going to be big levers of change. So really, really excited, man.
I appreciate that. Respectfully, you simplified it for me, and I that sounds super cliche, but I'm like, dude, this has been just an awesome hour talking with you because it's just hit me in the face, and it's like, dude, you're right, just some minor tweaks with some huge upsides. So I'm very excited.
I love it. Well, thanks again, Kyle. Where can people go to find you? Have my team put your info in the show notes, like whether it's like Instagram, or anything
Yeah,
that you'd like to share as we wrap up.
I appreciate that. I'd love to connect with everybody on Instagram. My personal is Kyle_Pearson Moving. Trying to put out as much content as I can lately. I'm learning how to do that. So yeah, it's a great way to connect with me. I'd love to connect with any other business owners just because we're all in this together. We can all learn something from somebody else.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Kyle, and we will see everyone else in the next episode.